Hello, dear traveler. Welcome back to the Candlelit Journal. Tonight we return to that familiar inn at the crossroads, where two ancient roads meet and travelers pause to decide their direction. Our innkeeper has opened his leather-bound diary once more, and within these pages waits a most peculiar account. It begins as many nights do, with the creak of hinges, the stamp of boots, and the quiet hope for shelter. But this night, something is different. The travelers who arrive intend to stay only briefly. A meal, perhaps? A few hours of warmth. Then onward. But by morning, none of them will have left. The roads, it seems, have other plans, so settle in. Let the fire crackle softly in your imagination. Let the world outside grow quiet. And listen as our innkeeper recounts the night the road refused to let them leave.
The autumn wind arrived 3 days early this year. I noticed it first in the way the oak tree's branches moved, not swaying exactly, but reaching, as if the old tree were trying to grasp something just beyond its ancient limbs. The leaves had turned the color of rust and honey, and they fell in spirals that seemed almost deliberate, tracing patterns on the crossroads below that I could not read but felt compelled to study. I had been scrubbing the long table near the window when I first felt the wind change. It came from the north, carrying with it the scent of pine resin and something else, something older. The smell of stone after rain, perhaps, or the faint mineral tang of mountain streams running cold and clear through passes that had not seen summer warmth in months. The white candle on the mantel, that strange, translucent thing that has burned without diminishing since the winter solstice of my first year here, flickered once. Its flame leaned toward the door, though no draft had entered the common room. I have learned to notice such things. The candle has its own language, and I have become fluent in its silent warnings over the years. I set down my cloth and walked to the window. The crossroads stretched before me, the north-south road cutting through the landscape like a scar healed silver with age, the east-west road intersecting it at the exact point where the oak tree stood sentinel. Both roads were empty, which was unusual for this time of year. The harvest caravans should have been passing through daily, heavy wagons laden with gourds and barley, their drivers eager to reach the southern markets before the first frost. But the roads lay bare. Dust swirled in small eddies where the wind touched down, and the shadows of clouds moved across the packed earth like dark ships crossing a pale sea. I returned to my work. The inn would not clean itself, and travelers, when they came, deserved warmth and order. By late afternoon, the sky had darkened to the color of old pewter. Not storm clouds precisely, but something heavier. The light that filtered through the common room windows was the amber of early evening, though the sun would not set for another 3 hours at least. I lit the lamps earlier than usual, their soft glow pushing back against the premature twilight, and I stoked the fierce until it crackled with renewed vigor. It was then that the first traveler arrived. I heard her horse before I saw her, the steady clip of hooves on packed earth, moving neither fast nor slow, but with the measured pace of someone who had been riding for many hours. When I opened the door, I found a woman of perhaps 40 years standing at the threshold, her traveling cloak pulled tight against the wind. She had the weathered look of someone who spent more time on the road than off it, with lines around her eyes that spoke of squinting into distant horizons, and hair the color of iron that had begun to streak with silver. "I seek shelter," she said. Her voice was low and direct, the voice of someone unaccustomed to asking for things she could not pay for. "Just until the wind settles, an hour, perhaps two." "You're welcome here," I told her, stepping aside. "All who's to need shelter may find it at this inn." She entered with the careful grace of someone assessing her surroundings, her eyes moving from the fire to the tables to the narrow starets in the corner. Her gaze lingered on the white candle for a moment longer than most would notice, before she nodded once, as if confirming something to herself. "I am Marin," she said, unbuckling her saddlebags. "A courier. I carry letters between the coastal tunes and the frontier homesteads to the west. I was not intending to stop here tonight, but the wind..." She trailed off, frowning slightly. "The wind made the decision for me, it seems." I took her cloak and hung it near the fire to dry. It was heavier than I expected, weighted in places that suggested hidden pockets sewn into the lining. A courier's cloak designed for discretion as much as warmth. "The wind has been strange today," I agreed, "coming from directions it should not, carrying scents from places far away." Marin looked at me with something like recognition. "You notice it too, then, the wrongness of it." I offered her a seat near the hearth and began preparing a mug of spiced cider, warming it over the fire until steam rose from its surface. "I have kept this inn for 13 years, I said. "I have learned to pay attention to the small things that others overlook. The weather speaks if one knows how to listen." She accepted the cider with a nod of thanks, wrapping her fingers around the warm clay mug. "I have been a courier for 20 years, she said. "I know every road between here and the eastern coast. I know how long each journey should take, down to the hour, and today..." She paused, her brow furrowing. "Today I should have passed this crossroads before noon. I should be 30 miles west of here by now, making camp for the night at the old stone bridge." "But you're here," I said. "But I am here." She stared into the fire, and I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not fear exactly, but the quiet unease of someone who has encountered something that defies explanation. The road seemed longer than it should have been. Every time I looked ahead, the crossroads seemed no closer than it had an hour before, as if the distance itself were stretching. I said nothing. I had heard such stories before, from travelers who arrived looking bewildered, their faces pale with something they could not name. The crossroads has its own rules, its own rhythms. Sometimes it draws people in. Sometimes it holds them longer than they intended, and sometimes it refuses to let them leave. The second traveler arrived as the last light faded from the sky. He came on foot, his boots caked with mud that had dried to a pale gray, and he carried a leather satchel over one shoulder that clinked faintly with each step. His clothes marked him as a tradesman of some kind. Practical wool trousers, a linen shirt stained with the unmistakable residue of metal polish, and a leather apron folded and tucked into his belt. "A tinker," he said when I asked, though I had not truly needed to. "Edric, by name. I repair kettles, lanterns, and anything that can be bent back into shape or soldered whole again." He smiled, but the expression did not reach his eyes. I was heading south toward the lowland villages. Good work there this time of year. Farmers getting their equipment ready for winter storage. I welcomed him inside and offered him a place at the table across from Marin, who acknowledged him with a brief nod before returning her attention to the fire. Edric set his satchel down with obvious relief, rolling his shoulders to ease the tension of carrying his tools for what must have been many miles. "Strange day for traveling," he said as I brought him a bowl of root vegetable stew thick with barley and fragrant with thyme. "I left the northern settlements at first light, planning to reach the river crossing by nightfall. But the road—" He shook his head, picking up his spoon but not yet eating. "The road did not cooperate." Marin looked up at this, her expression sharpening. "What do you mean?" Edric frowned at his stew as if it held answers he could not quite grasp. "I mean that I walked for hours without making progress. Every time I crested a hill, I expected to see the crossroads below, but instead there was just more road, more hills, more empty landscape stretching toward a horizon that never seemed to come any closer." "I experienced the same thing," Marin said quietly. "On horseback from the east, the road seemed to stretch itself, as if it did not want me to arrive." They looked at each other for a long moment, two strangers connected by an experience that neither could fully explain. Then Edric turned to me. "Has this happened before?" he asked. "Travelers arriving later than they should, speaking of roads that seemed longer than they remembered." I set another log on the fire, watching the flames curl around its edges before answering. "This crossroads is old," I said. "Older than the inn. Older, perhaps, than any settlement within 100 miles. People have been meeting at this junction for generations, pausing to decide their direction, resting before continuing their journeys. And yes, there are nights when the crossroad seems reluctant to let people pass." "Reluctant," Edric repeated, as if tasting the word. That is one way to put it. Outside, the wind gusted against the shutters, making them rattle in their frames. The sound was like knocking, like someone seeking entrance but too polite to use the door. The third and fourth travelers arrived together, though it was clear from their body language that they were not truly traveling as virtuous companions. The woman came first, pushing through the door with the determined stride of someone who had been walking for far too long and refused to show weakness. She was young, perhaps 25, with dark hair, braided in a practical style, and hands that bore the calluses of someone who worked with needle and thread. A seamstress, I guessed, or perhaps a weaver. Behind her came a man of similar age, though his bearing was entirely different. Where she was determined and focused, he seemed distracted, his gaze constantly drifting toward the windows, as if watching for something outside. He carried a worn leather case strapped across his back, and when he set it down, I heard the unmistakable hollow resonance of a stringed instrument. "I am Linnea," the woman said, accepting my offer of warmth with visible relief. "A seamstress from one of the frontier settlements to the west. I was traveling east toward the coastal towns. My sister is expecting a child, and I promised I would be there for the birth." She glanced toward the window, and I saw worry flicker across her features. "I should have arrived 2 days ago." The musician, for that is clearly what he was, removed his cloak with less urgency, though I noticed his hands trembled slightly as he hung it on the peg near the door. "Corwin," he said when I looked his way, "a minstrel by trade, though not a particularly successful one. I was heading west toward the frontier, hoping to find audiences less discerning than those in the coastal cities." Marin, who had been watching the new arrivals with quiet interest, set down her empty mug. "You were heading west," she said, "and you came from the east. Yet you arrived at the same time as someone heading in the opposite direction." Corwin's face paled slightly. "I noticed that as well. We met on the road, perhaps a mile from here, both of us walking toward the crossroads, both of us somehow approaching from the same direction, though that should have been impossible." "The road turned me around," Linnea said, her voice tight with frustration. "I am certain of it. I was walking east toward the rising sun. I could feel it on my face, but every time I looked back, the crossroads was behind me, as if I'd been walking the wrong way all along." "The same happened to me," Corwin admitted. "I thought I was losing my mind. I turned around 3 times, certain that I was correcting my course, and each time I ended up walking toward this inn instead of away from it." The fire crackled, and the white candle's flame leaned once more toward the door. I moved to the window and looked out at the crossroads. The oak tree stood in its usual place, its branches bare and dark against the twilight sky. The roads stretched away in all 4 directions, disappearing into the gathering darkness. Everything looked normal, and yet nothing felt normal at all. The 5th traveler arrived just as I was beginning to believe no more would come. He was an older man, perhaps 60, with a face like weathered oak bark and eyes that held the quiet patience of someone who had seen much and learned to accept what he could not change. He walked with a slight limp, favoring his left leg, and he carried a walking stick carved with symbols I did not recognize, spirals and stars, and something that might have been letters in a language no longer spoken. "I am Aldrich," he said, his voice like gravel smoothed by a stream, a pilgrim of sorts. Though I confess I'm not certain what I am seeking or where I am meant to find it. I offered him the last empty seat near the fire, and he lowered himself into it with a sigh of relief that spoke of many miles traveled. The other travelers regarded him with varying degrees of curiosity. Marin, with the assessment of someone accustomed to reading people quickly, Edric with the open interest of a man who enjoyed conversation, Linnea with the distracted politeness of someone whose mind was elsewhere, and Corwin with the nervous attention of a young man who sensed something significant in the old pilgrim's presence. "You seek something," Marin said. It was not a question. Eldrick smiled, the expression carving deeper lines into his weathered face. "I have been seeking for 30 years, he said. "Since I was a young man, barely older than this minstrel here. I had a vision, you see. A dream of a place where the roads meet and the boundaries between worlds grow thin. A place where questions might find answers if one is patient enough to wait." "And you believe this crossroads is that place?" I asked, setting a bowl of stew before him. He picked up the spoon but did not eat, instead turning it slowly in his fingers as if divining meaning from its simple shape. "I have visited 100 crossroads in my travels," he said. "Some were ordinary, some held echoes of significance, but this one—" He looked around the common room, his gaze lingering on the white candle. "This one feels different, as if the very stones beneath us are aware of our presence." "The road would not let me pass," Corwin said suddenly, as if the old man's words had loosened something in him. "I tried to leave when I first realized I was walking the wrong direction. I turned around and walked away from the crossroads, and within an hour I was approaching it again from a different direction entirely, as if the road itself had curved to bring me back." "I experienced the same," Linnea said quietly. "I thought perhaps I was ill or confused from lack of sleep, but the road seemed determined to bring me here." Aldrich nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he had long suspected. "The crossroads calls to those it needs," he said. "Or perhaps it holds them until they have done what they were meant to do." "And what are we meant to do?" Edric asked, his practical tinker's mind seeking practical answers. "We are strangers, traveling in different directions with different destinations. What could we possibly do together that we could not do apart?" No one had an answer. The fire crackled, the wind howled outside, and the white candle's flame burned steady and bright, as it had burned since the night the old woman gave it to me, walking atop the snow as if the laws of the world did not apply to her. I found myself studying each of them in turn, these strangers who had been drawn together by forces none of us understood. Marin, with her courier's bearing and hidden pockets, carrying secrets that were not hers, but which she guarded as fiercely as her own. Edric, whose hands had shaped and mended countless objects, but who seemed uncertain how to repair the distance between himself and the life he had left behind. Linnea, wound tight as a bowstring with worry for a sister she might not reach in time. Corwin, clutching his silent instrument like a child holds a beloved toy, afraid to use it but unable to let it go. And Aldrich, the pilgrim who had walked 30 years towards something he could not name, finally arriving at a place that felt like an answer, though he did not yet know the question. We were strangers, yes, but there was something in the room that felt almost familiar, as if we had all been walking parallel paths without knowing it, and the crossroads had finally brought those paths together. I banked the fire for the night and showed the travelers to their rooms. The private chambers were already occupied by Marin and Aldrich, so the others would share one of the common rooms. 3 pallets arranged along the wall, straw mattresses covered with rough wool blankets. It was humble accommodation, but I had seen weary travelers sleep more soundly on these simple beds than nobles slept in feathered luxury. As I returned downstairs to begin my nightly ritual of writing in this journal, I paused at the window. The crossroads lay dark beyond the glass, the oak tree a shadow against the deeper shadow of the sky. No stars were visible. The clouds hung too low, pressing down on the world like a blanket drawn over a sleeping child. Somewhere in that darkness, the road stretched away in 4 directions, and somewhere in that darkness, something had decided that these 5 travelers would go no further, not yet. I sat at my desk, lit a second candle, an ordinary one, not the white candle that never diminishes, and began to write. The 7th day of October. Morning came slowly, as if the sun itself were reluctant to rise. I woke before the others, as is my habit, and descended the narrow staircase to the common room to find the fire reduced to embers. I knelt before the hearth and coaxed it back to life, feeding it kindling, and then larger logs until the flames crackled with renewed vigor. Outside, the light was the pale gray of early dawn, and through the windows I could see that a mist had risen overnight, blanketing the crossroads in a soft white shroud. The travelers emerged one by one, drawn by the warmth of the fire and the smell of bread I'd set to bake in the clay oven. Marin was first, already dressed and alert, her courier's instincts having woken her at the first hint of light. Edric followed, rubbing sleep from his eyes, but moving with the purposeful energy of a man eager to be on his way. Linnea came next, her braids slightly disheveled from sleep, worry still etched in the lines around her mouth. Corwin appeared last of the overnight guests, his instrument case clutched protectively against his chest, as if he feared it might be taken from him. Only Aldrich remained upstairs, though I could hear his slow footsteps moving across the floorboards above us. There was something deliberate about his pace, as if he were measuring the room step by step, cataloging its dimensions for some purpose I could not guess. I busied myself with the morning's tasks while the travelers ate. The bread needed attention. It had risen beautifully in the night's warmth, and I shaped it into loaves with practiced hands, feeling the dough yield beneath my fingers like something alive. The smell of yeast and flour filled the kitchen, mingling with the wood smoke from the oven and the fainter scent of the herbs drying above the hearth. Through the doorway, I could hear the travelers speaking in low voices. Their conversation was stilted at first, the awkward exchange of near strangers forced into proximity, but gradually it warmed. Edric asked about Marin's courier routes, and she described the eastern coast in terms that made me wish I had traveled beyond these crossroads in my youth. The salt marshes where herons stood like gray sentinels. The harbor towns where ships from distant lands brought spices that burned the tongue and silks that flowed like water. The lighthouse, abandoned now, that fishermen claimed still shone with ghostly light on moonless nights. Corwin said little, but I noticed his fingers tapping against the table in a rhythm that might have been a song. Linnea watched the window with the intensity of someone willing the world to change through sheer determination. Her jaw was set, her shoulders tight with the tension of helplessness. When I brought out the fresh bread, still steaming from the oven, even Linnea's expression softened. There is something about warm bread that speaks to the body's deepest need. Not just hunger, but comfort, safety, the assurance that someone has taken care to provide for you. "I will be leaving as soon as I've eaten," Marin announced, accepting a slice of warm bread and a mug of herbal tea. "I am already 2 days behind schedule. The letters I carry cannot wait indefinitely." "As will I," Edric agreed. "The southern villages are expecting me. If I push hard, I can make up some of the lost time." Linnea said nothing, but her eyes were fixed on the door, calculating the distance between herself and her sister's bedside. Corwin simply nodded, though I noticed he did not move toward his cloak, hanging near the entrance. They ate quickly, eager to be on their way. Marin was the first to rise, pulling on her heavy courier's cloak and buckling her saddlebags with practiced efficiency. She thanked me for the shelter, pressed a coin into my hand that was more than fair payment for a night's lodging, and strode toward the door with the confident steps of someone who knew exactly where she was going. She opened the door and stopped. "What is this?" she breathed, and there was something in her voice I had rarely heard, the crack of uncertainty in someone who had built her life on certainty. I moved to stand beside her, and what I saw made my breath catch in my throat. The crossroads was there, as it always was. The oak tree stood sentinel at the junction, its bare branches reaching toward a sky heavy with low-hanging clouds. The 4 roads stretched away into the mist, disappearing into white nothingness within 100 yards. But something was wrong. Something was fundamentally, impossibly wrong. The road heading west, the road Marin needed to take, appeared normal for perhaps 50 feet. Then it simply ended. Not in a barrier or a washout or any physical obstruction. It simply faded like a painting left in the rain, the packed earth dissolving into gray nothing. The same was true of all 4 roads, north, south, east, Kikti, each one visible for a short distance before disappearing into a void that was not fog, not mist, but something else entirely. Something that swallowed light and distance and hope. "That is not natural," Edric said from behind me, his voice hollow. "That is not possible." Marin took a step forward, then another, moving toward the road that should have led her west. I watched her walk down the path, her figure growing smaller as she approached the point where the road ceased to exist. She stopped just before the edge, reached out her hand, and jerked it back as if she had been burned. She turned and walked back to the inn. Her face was the color of old parchment, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I cannot pass," she said. "There is nothing there, just cold. A cold so deep it feels like it goes on forever." One by one, the others tried. Edric walked toward the southern road, stopping at the same point, testing the boundary with the end of his tinker's tools before retreating. The metal of his longest probe seemed to frost over when he extended it into the gray nothing, and when he pulled it back, ice crystals clung to its surface, ice that should not have formed in October air. Linnea ran toward the eastern road with desperate determination, only to collapse to her knees at the edge, sobbing with frustration and fear. I went to her and helped her stand, guiding her back toward the inn with an arm around her shoulders. She was trembling, and not from cold. Corwin ventured toward the northern road last, though he turned back long before reaching the boundary, as if something in the mist had spoken to him and he had not liked what it said. His face had gone pale, and when he returned to the inn, he would not meet anyone's eyes. "What did you see?" I asked him quietly, while the others were still outside, still testing the boundaries, still trying to find some crack in the wall that had risen around us. He shook his head. "Nothing," he said. "I saw nothing. But I heard..." He swallowed hard. "I heard my teacher's voice telling me to stop, telling me it was not time to leave." His hands were shaking. "He has been dead for 3 years. How could I hear his voice?" I had no answer for him. The crossroads keeps its own counsel, and I have learned not to question the strange occurrences that sometimes unfold here. Only Aldrich, who had finally descended the stairs to join us, remained calm. He stood in the doorway, leaning on his carved walking stick, watching the others with an expression that was almost peaceful. The symbols carved into the wood seemed to catch the morning light in strange ways, throwing patterns on the flagstone floor that looked almost like letters in an alphabet I could not read. "So," he said quietly, "it has begun." His voice carried a weight that silenced the others. Marin turned from the threshold where she still stood, her courier's cloak pulled tight around her, as if she could ward off the impossibility of what she had just experienced. Edric set down his tools, his practical mind struggling to reconcile what he had seen with what he knew to be possible. Linnea wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, her grief momentarily replaced by a different kind of attention. And Corwin looked at the old pilgrim as if seeing him for the first time, seeing not just an old man with a walking stick, but someone who might understand what was happening. "You know what this is," Marin said. It was not quite a question. Aldrich stepped fully into the common room, letting the door close behind him. The sound of it latching seemed louder than it should have been, more final. He made his way to the chair nearest the fire. My father's chair, the one with the worn armrests and the slight tilt to the left from decades of use, and lowered himself into it with the careful movements of someone whose bones ached with more than just age. "I do not know what this is," he said. "Not precisely, but I know what the stories call it, and I know that fighting it will accomplish nothing." "What has begun?" Marin demanded, her voice sharp with the frustration of a woman unaccustomed to circumstances beyond her control. "What is happening to the roads? Why can we not leave?" Aldrich made his way slowly to one of the wooden chairs near the fire, lowering himself into it with the careful movements of age. "I have studied the old stories for most of my life," he said. "Tales of places where the boundaries between worlds grow thin. Crossroads are significant in such tales. They are liminal spaces, points of transition, of choice, of change. And sometimes, when conditions are right, they become something more." "Something more," Edric repeated flatly. "That explains nothing." "It explains everything, if you know how to listen." Aldrich's eyes, I noticed, were not fixed on any of us, but on the white candle burning on the mantel. "The crossroads has chosen to hold us. Whether for our protection or for some other purpose, I cannot say. But struggling against it will accomplish nothing. The roads will open again when they are ready, not before." "My sister is giving birth," Linnea said, her voice breaking. "She needs me. I promised I would be there." "And the letters I carry may determine lives," Marin added. "Messages of inheritance, of marriage contracts, of debts come and due. People are waiting for me." Aldrich nodded, and there was genuine sympathy in his weathered face. "I understand. Truly I do. But the crossroads does not negotiate. It holds or it releases, and we have no power to influence which it chooses to do." "You speak as if it were alive," Corwin said quietly. He had retrieved his instrument from its case. A lute, I saw now, its wood worn smooth from years of handling, and was running his fingers absently over the strings. "As if the crossroads itself had a will." "Perhaps it does," Aldrich replied. "Or perhaps it is simply a mechanism, a door that opens and closes according to rules we do not understand. Does it matter? The effect is the same either way." I stood at the window, watching the mist swirl beyond the boundaries where the roads had vanished. There was movement in that whiteness. Not the movement of wind or weather, but something else. Shapes that formed and dissolved, almost familiar, almost recognizable, but never quite coalescing into anything I could name. "The old woman told me this place was special," I said, and the others turned to look at me. "When she gave me the candle, she said the inn was a refuge in the wilderness, a light in the darkness. She told me to welcome all who came, because in the days ahead, many would need what I offered." "What old woman?" Marin asked. I told them the story I had told only a handful of times before, of the first winter, the solstice night, the stranger who had walked atop the snow without leaving footprints, of her blessing, her warning, her gift of the white candle that burned without diminishing. When I finished, the common room was silent. Even the fire seemed to have hushed itself, its flames burning low and steady. "A white candle that never melts," Aldrich murmured, his eyes still fixed on the mantel. "I have read of such things, beacons that mark places of power, lights that guide travelers not to their destinations, but to where they need to be." "I need to be at my sister's side," Linnea said stubbornly. "Perhaps," Aldrich agreed. "But perhaps the crossroads knows something you do not. Perhaps there is a reason you were brought here on this night with these particular companions." "We are strangers," Edric said. "We have nothing in common." Aldrich smiled, and For a moment, his weathered face seemed almost young. "Are you certain of that?" The morning stretched into afternoon, and the afternoon into evening, and still the roads remained closed. I kept the fire burning and the food coming, warm stew, fresh bread, spiced cider, to chase away the chill that seemed to seep through the walls despite the flames. The travelers drifted through the common room like restless spirits, unable to settle, unable to accept their captivity. Marin spent hours at the window watching the mist, searching for any sign that the roads were returning. Edric occupied himself by examining every hinge and latch in the inn, tightening bolts and oiling mechanisms that had not squeaked in years, his hands needing occupation even when his mind could find no solutions. Linnea paced, her footsteps tracing the same path from the door to the fire and back again, over and over, as if movement alone could carry her to her sister's side. Corwin sat in the corner, farthest from the others, his lute in his lap, his fingers moving silently over the strings. I noticed that he did not play, did not produce any sound, but simply moved through the motions of songs only he could hear. Only Aldrich seemed at peace. He sat near the fire, his carved walking stick propped against his chair, his eyes half closed as if meditating or sleeping. Occasionally his lips moved, forming words too quiet to hear, and I wondered what prayers or incantations he was murmuring. As the light began to fade once more, Linnea stopped her pacing and turned to face the room. The firelight caught the lines of tension in her face, the dark shadows beneath her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights long before she arrived at this inn. "We cannot simply wait," she said. "There must be something we can do, some way to open the roads or find another path." "I have walked every inch of the crossroads," Marin said, without turning from the window. The glass reflected her face back at her, and I saw that she looked older than she'd had when she arrived, not in years, but in weariness. "There are no other paths. The 4 roads are the only ways in or out, and all 4 are closed." "Then we must find what is causing this," Linnea pressed. "If the crossroads is holding us for a reason, perhaps we can satisfy that reason and be released." Aldrich opened his eyes. They were clear, I noticed, clearer than they had been when he first arrived, as if the day of enforced stillness had allowed something to settle in him, some sediment of years finally coming to rest. "An interesting thought," he said. "But what reason could the crossroads have for holding 5 strangers who share no connection, no common purpose, no shared destination?" "You said yourself that the crossroads might know something we do not," Edric pointed out. He had stopped his restless repair work and was sitting at the long table, his hands folded before him in the unaccustomed posture of someone who has nothing to fix. "Perhaps we do share a connection. Perhaps we simply have not discovered it yet." A silence fell over the room. I watched the travelers exchange glances, suspicious, curious, uncertain. They were strangers, yes, but they had been thrown together by circumstances none of them understood, and in the absence of other options, the suggestion had merit. The fire popped, sending a cascade of sparks up the chimney, and one of the logs shifted with a sound like a sigh. Outside the gray, nothing that had replaced the roads pressed against the world like something patient and watchful. "Very well," Marin said at last, turning from the window. Her reflection vanished as she moved, replaced by the fire's glow on the dark glass. "Let us share our stories, not the surface details, our names, our trades, our destinations, but the deeper truths, the things we carry that we do not speak of. Perhaps there is something in our secrets that connects us." "You're asking us to trust strangers," Corwin said quietly. His lute was in his lap again. His fingers rested on the strings, though they made no sound. "I am asking you to try," Marin replied. "Unless you have a better suggestion." No one did. The room was quiet, except for the fire's crackle and the wind's muffled howl. Beyond the walls, Marin took a seat at the long table, and one by one, the others joined her. I brought more cider, more bread, warm from the oven, the crust golden and crackled, and then withdrew to the kitchen doorway, close enough to hear but distant enough to give them privacy. Whatever secrets they chose to share, they would share with each other. I would simply listen as I always listened, and remember as I always remembered. I thought of my father, who had built this inn with his own hands, who had welcomed travelers for decades before the fever took him. He used to say that an innkeeper was not just a provider of food and shelter, but a keeper of stories, that people passing through left pieces of themselves behind, words, gestures, moments, and it was our duty to hold those pieces gently, to remember them, to honor them, even when the travelers themselves had moved on. Tonight, I sensed the travelers would leave pieces of themselves that they had never shown anyone, and I would hold those pieces as carefully as I held anything in this world. "I will begin," Marin said, her voice steady, but her hands wrapped tight around her mug. "Since I suggested this, it seems only fair." She took a breath, and I saw something shift in her face, a softening of the hard edges she wore like armor. "I told you I'm a courier," she said. "That is true. I carry letters between the coastal towns and the frontier settlements, and I have done so for 20 years. But there is a letter I have been carrying far longer than any other, a letter that is not meant for anyone living." She reached into her cloak and withdrew a folded paper, yellowed with age, its edges soft from years of handling. "This is the last letter my father wrote to me," she said. "He died before he could send it. I found it among his belongings after the burial, sealed and addressed in his own hand. I have never opened it." "Why not?" Linnea asked softly. Marin's jaw tightened. "Because I am afraid of what it might say. My father and I parted badly. There were words spoken that could not be taken back. I was young, angry, convinced I knew better than he did about everything. I left home to make my own way, and I did not return until it was too late." She touched the letter's edge, tracing the shape of her father's handwriting. Her fingers moved with the same care she might have used to touch a wound. "I have carried this with me for 15 years. Through every journey, Every crossroads, every night spent alone on the road, I tell myself I am waiting for the right moment to open it. But the truth is, I am simply afraid. She paused, looking at the letter as if it might speak to her, might reveal its contents through the yellowed paper itself. I became a courier because of him, she continued, her voice softer now. He was a scribe, spent his whole life writing letters for people who could not write themselves, love letters, business correspondence, legal documents, final wishes. He believed that words could cross any distance, bridge any divide. When I was a girl, I used to watch him work, and I thought his pen was magic. The way marks on paper could carry a person's heart to someone far away. She looked up at the others, and I saw something vulnerable in her eyes, something she usually kept buried beneath her courier's efficiency. When I left, I told him his faith in words was naive, that people lied, that letters were just paper, that nothing he wrote could change the world. I was so certain I was right. Her voice caught. I was so young and so stupid and so certain. She fell silent, and no one spoke. The fire crackled, and outside the mist pressed against the windows like something curious and patient. The white candle on the mantel flickered once, just once, and then burned steady again. Then Edric cleared his throat. He shifted in his seat, a man unused to being the center of attention, more comfortable fixing things than explaining them. I understand fear, he said, though mine takes a different form. He reached into his satchel and withdrew a small object, a pocket watch I saw, its silver case tarnished with age and its face cracked along one edge. The chain that had once attached it to a vest had been carefully coiled and tucked into the case's hinge as if someone had preserved it exactly as it had been the last time it was worn. This belonged to my brother, he said. His name was Bertram. He was the older one, the brave one, the one everyone expected to do great things. I was always in his shadow, not that he cast it intentionally. He just shone the way some people do. Everything came easily to him, and he never made others feel lesser for it. He turned the watch over in his hands, and I saw that the back was engraved with initials I could not read from where I stood. B.A.M. perhaps, though the tarnish made it hard to be certain. He gave it to me the day before he left to seek work in the mountain mining camps. The war had ended, and the camps were hiring anyone who could swing a pickaxe. He said the watch had been our grandfather's, passed down through generations, and he wanted me to have it in case. He paused, his voice catching, in case he did not return. Did he return? Corwin asked. The young minstrel's face was pale, but there was genuine sympathy in his eyes. Edric shook his head. There was an accident, a cave-in. They never recovered his body. He held the watch up, tilting it so the firelight caught the cracked face. The last thing he has said to me was, "Keep this wound." I thought he meant the watch, that he was making a joke about its condition. But now I wonder if he knew, if he was trying to tell me something. "Keep this wound," Marin repeated quietly, as if grief itself were something to be preserved. "I have carried this watch for 7 years," Edric continued. "It stopped working the day I received word of his death, and I have never had it repaired. I tell myself it is because I do not want to disturb its mechanisms. But the truth is, I cannot bear to hear it tick again. It would mean accepting that time has moved forward, that he is truly gone, that the world continues without him in it. He set the watch on the table, and it sat there like a small memorial, silent, frozen, holding its moment of loss like a fly preserved in amber. 2 secrets now, 2 burdens carried for years, shaping the lives of those who bore them. I noticed that Linnea was crying again, silently, tears tracking down her cheeks, though she made no sound. Linnea spoke next, her voice barely above a whisper. She had stopped crying, but her face was still wet, and she made no move to dry it, as if the tears were a part of what she needed to say. I am traveling to my sister because she is having a child, she said. But I have not told you why that matters so much to me. She pulled something from her pocket, a small piece of embroidered cloth, the stitches forming the shape of a bird in flight. The needlework was exquisite, I noticed, even from across the room. Every feather was distinct, every curve of the wing precisely rendered. This was not the work of a casual seamstress, but of an artist who had poured her heart into every thread. I had a daughter, she said. Her name was Rose. She lived for 3 days, long enough for me to hold her, to name her, to promise her the world, and then she was gone. Tears slipped down her cheeks again, but she made no move to wipe them away. The healer said her lungs were too small, that she never had a chance, that I should be grateful she did not suffer. Her hands trembled as she held the embroidered bird. I made this for her while I was carrying her, a little bird, because I wanted her to be free, to soar, to see everything the world had to offer. I imagined hanging it above her cradle, watching her eyes follow its bright colors as she grew. I imagined teaching her to sew, showing her how to make birds of her own. She pressed the cloth to her chest over her heart. My sister's child is due any day now, she continued, and I have been so afraid that if I am not there, something will go wrong, afraid that if I am there, I will not be strong enough to hold my grief while holding someone else's joy, but most of all afraid that this child, my sister's child, will make me remember my own daughter, will make the loss fresh again, as raw as it was the day I buried her. Her voice broke on the last word, and for a moment she could not continue. Marin reached across the table and placed her hand over Linnea's, a gesture that seemed to surprise them both. I have never told anyone about Rose, Linnea whispered, not even my sister. She knows I lost a child, but not the details, not the 3 days I spent memorizing her face, knowing she would not live to see a fourth. The room was very quiet now. Even the wind outside seemed to have stilled, as if listening. The fire burnt low, its flames barely moving, and the white candle's light seemed to grow brighter, as if responding to the depth of grief being spoken aloud. Corwin shifted in his seat, his fingers moving restlessly over his lute's silent strings. The instrument rested in his lap like a sleeping animal, beautiful and dormant, waiting for something to wake it, "I suppose it is my turn," he said. His voice was soft, uncertain, the voice of someone who had spent more time listening than speaking. "I told you I'm a minstrel. That is true, as far as it goes, but there is more to the story." He touched the neck of his lute, tracing the grain of the wood with something like reverence. The firelight caught the worn edges where countless fingers had shaped melodies, and I saw that the instrument had been loved fiercely, even if it had not been played. "This instrument was my teacher's," he said. "His name was Aldous. He was the greatest musician I've ever known. He could make a lute sing like a human voice, weep like rain, laugh like children at play. When he performed, people would stop what they were doing and simply listen. Not because he demanded attention, but because the music demanded it. His fingers stilled on the strings. I studied with him for 10 years, Corwin continued. I was an orphan, you see. My parents died when I was very young. Plague took them both in the same week, and I was raised by anyone who would have me. I slept in barns and alleys and beneath market stalls. I learned to steal what I needed to survive. And then one day, when I was 12, I heard Aldous playing in a village square. He smiled, but it was a sad smile, heavy with memory. The music stopped me cold. I had never heard anything so beautiful. I stood there for hours just listening, and when he finished, I walked up to him and begged him to teach me. I had nothing to offer him, no money, no family name, no connections, just a hunger to learn what he knew. He agreed? Marin asked. Corwin nodded. He said he saw something in me, something he called the listening. He said most people heard music without truly listening to it, but I had the gift of attention, of receiving what a song had to offer. His voice grew quieter. In all that time, I never played a single note as well as he played every note. But he never made me feel inferior. He said perfection was not the goal, connection was. That music existed to bridge the distance between souls. What happened to him? Asked Aldrich gently. Corwin's face darkened. He fell ill, a wasting sickness that stole his strength, his breath, his ability to hold an instrument. It started with tremors in his hands, small at first, barely noticeable, and then progressed until he could not grip the neck of his lute. By the end, he could not even listen to music. The sound caused him pain, as if his body had turned against the very thing he loved. He gave me this lute on the last day I saw him, Corwin continued. He placed it in my hands and made me promise to keep playing, to carry his music forward into the world, to not let the silence win. But, Aldrich prompted gently, but I cannot. Corwin's voice cracked. Every time I try to play, I hear how far short I fall of his genius. Every note reminds me of what was lost when he died. So I carry the lute, and I move through the motions of songs, but I have not produced a single sound in 3 years. I have become a minstrel who cannot play, carrying an instrument I am too afraid to use. He looked down at the lute in his lap, and I saw that his eyes were wet. He deserved a better student, Corwin whispered. Someone who could have kept his promise. Someone braver than me. 4 secrets. 4 wounds carried in silence, shaping lives, limiting possibilities. The common room felt different now. Smaller, somehow. More intimate, as if the sharing of these hidden truths had drawn the walls closer together, creating a space that held only these 5 people and their pain. All eyes turned to Aldrich. The old pilgrim had been listening with his eyes closed, but now he opened them, and there was something different in his gaze, something raw and exposed that had not been there before. The weathered oak bark of his face seemed softer, as if the stories he had heard had worn away some protective layer he had built over the years. He smiled, but there was sadness in it now, a sadness that seemed deeper and older than the secrets the others had shared. This was the sadness of decades, of a grief that had become so familiar. It had shaped him, carved him, made him into the man he was. I told you I have been seeking for 30 years, he said. That is true, but I did not tell you what started me on this path. He reached for his walking stick, running his weathered hands over the carved symbols that decorated its length. The spirals and strange letters seemed to move in the firelight, though I knew that must have been a trick of my eyes. I had a wife, he said. Her name was Eleanor. We were young together, foolish together, in love in the way that only the young and foolish can be. We met at a harvest festival when I was 22. She was dancing and I was trying to pretend I was not watching her. She saw through me immediately. She always saw through me. He was quiet for a moment, and I saw his thumb trace the largest of the carved spirals. We planned to spend our lives exploring the world together, he continued, seeking wonders, collecting stories to tell our grandchildren someday. We would walk the mountain passes and sail the coastal waters and visit every crossroads where roads intersected. We both believed that the world was full of magic waiting to be discovered if only one had eyes to see it. She sounds remarkable, Marin said quietly. She was. Aldrich's voice was barely audible now. She was fire and water and endless questions. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. He fell silent again, and none of us rushed to fill the space. This was not a pause for breath. It was a pause for courage, for the gathering of strength to say what came next. She died in childbirth, he said finally. The child died with her. A son. They told me it was a son, though I never saw his face. I was not there when it happened. I had gone to the village for supplies, a journey of 3 hours each way, and when I returned, his voice broke. When I returned, they were already gone, both of them, and I was left with nothing but memories and a grief so vast, I thought it would swallow me whole. Linnea made a small sound, and I saw her clutch the embroidered bird more tightly to her chest. Her own loss echoed in Aldrich's words, and I could see the recognition in her eyes. The terrible kinship of those who have buried children. I began walking, Aldrich said, not toward anywhere, just away, away from the empty house, away from the grave I could not bear to visit. I had them buried together, you see, mother and son, so they would not be alone in whatever came after, away from everything that reminded me of what I had lost. He looked at the fire, but I sensed he was seeing something else. Years of roads, of distance, of endless searching. And somewhere along the way, walking became seeking. I told myself I was looking for answers, for meaning, for some explanation that would make sense of senseless loss. I visited holy places and consulted wise men and read every text I could find about death and grief and the possibility of reunion in some other world. I carved these symbols into my walking stick, each one representing a tradition I studied, a question I asked, a place I sought answers. "Did you find answers?" Edric asked. Aldrich shook his head slowly. "I found only more questions, and eventually I realized that I was not truly seeking answers at all. I was simply running, moving from place to place because standing still meant feeling. And feeling meant drowning in a grief I did not know how to survive." He looked around the table at the faces of his fellow travelers, at Marin and her unopened letter, at Edric and his stopped watch, at Linnea and her embroidered bird, at Corwin and his silent lute. And I saw something shift in his expression, something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "We are all running," he said gently, "every one of us, carrying our wounds like travelers carry provisions, using movement to avoid the stillness where pain lives. And perhaps that is why the crossroads has held us. Perhaps we needed to stop. Perhaps we needed to speak these truths aloud to strangers who might understand, because strangers do not carry the weight of expectation that loved ones do." The fire popped, sending a cascade of sparks up the chimney. Outside, the mist continued to press against the windows, soft and patient and waiting. "Strangers can be witnesses," Aldrich continued. "They can hear our stories without trying to fix them. They can hold our grief without making it about their own feelings. They can say, 'I understand,' without the complicated history that makes loved ones' sympathy feel like something we must protect them from." He looked at each of them in turn, his weathered face full of a compassion that seemed to encompass all their pain. "Tonight, we have stopped running. Tonight, we have spoken our wounds aloud, and perhaps, that is what the crossroads was waiting for." The night grew deeper. The fire burned low, and one by one, the travelers made their way to their beds, carrying with them secrets that no longer felt quite so heavy. I stayed in the common room a while longer, writing these words by candlelight, listening to the wind that no longer howled, but merely whispered, as if it too was ready for rest. The 8th day of October, I woke to the sound of singing. At first, I thought I was dreaming. The music seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the narrow space of my chamber beneath the sloped roof, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. Then I realized it was not singing at all. It was a lute being played, and played with such skill and emotion that it seemed to have a voice of its own. I rose quickly, my heart suddenly full of a hope I could not explain, and descended the stairs to find Corwin seated by the fire, his lute cradled in his arms, his fingers moving across the strings with a confidence I had not seen in him before. His eyes were closed, and there were tears on his cheeks, but his expression was one of peace rather than pain. The melody he played was unfamiliar to me. Something old, I thought. Something that spoke of loss and hope, and the long journey between the two. It rose and fell like breath, like the rhythm of walking, like the turning of seasons. And as I listened, I felt something shift in my chest, some tightness that I had not known I was carrying until it began to release. The other travelers had gathered to listen, drawn from their beds by the music that could not be ignored. Marin sat very still, her father's letter open in her lap, tears tracking silently down her cheeks. I could see that she had finally broken the seal. The paper was unfolded, the words exposed to the firelight. And whatever she had found written there had changed something in her. The hard edges of her face had softened, and she looked younger, lighter, as if 15 years of fear had lifted from her shoulders. Edric held his brother's watch to his ear, and I could see from his face that the familiar tick, tick, tick had returned. He must have repaired it in the night, worked through the darkness with his tinker's tools, finally allowing himself to bring the mechanism back to life. His expression was bittersweet, grieving and grateful in equal measure, but there was no more resistance in it. Time was moving forward, and he was moving with it. Linnea had spread the embroidered bird on the table before her, and she was adding to it. New stitches joining the old, a second bird taking shape beside the first. Her needle moved with practiced grace, and I watched as the new bird emerged thread by thread, flying alongside its companion. Two birds now, mother and daughter perhaps, or grief and hope, or past and future. Whatever meaning she gave them, they flew together. And Aldrich stood at the window, his carved walking stick at his side, watching the crossroads with an expression of profound peace. I moved to stand beside him, and together we looked out at what the morning had revealed. The mist had lifted. I could see the roads now, all four of them, stretching away toward their respective horizons, solid and real and open. The gray nothing that had held us captive was gone as if it had never existed. The oak tree's branches had begun to bud, tiny green shoots appearing against the bare wood, as if spring had come early to this one place, as if the crossroads itself was celebrating something. The morning light was golden, warm, full of possibility, the light of new beginnings, of journeys continued, of lives changed. Corwin's song came to an end, the final note lingering in the air like a blessing. "The roads are open," Marin said, her voice rough with emotion. She held up her father's letter, the letter she had carried unopened for 15 years. "He forgave me," she said, "in this letter, written hours before he died. He forgave me for leaving. He said he understood why I had to go. He said he loved me and that he was proud of the woman I'd become." She pressed the letter to her heart. 15 years I carried this fear, and all along, forgiveness was waiting inside. Edric looked at his watch, running his thumb across the cracked face. "I had it repaired last night," he said. "I do not know why. The crossroads was still closed, and there seemed no reason to mark the passing of time we could not use. But I needed to hear it tick again. I needed to remember that time moves forward even when we wish it would not, that loss does not mean ending, that my brother's memory lives in the continuation of my own life, not in the stopping of it." Linnea held up the embroidered cloth, showing the two birds that now flew together across its surface. "This one is for my daughter," she said, touching the original bird, "and this one is for my sister's child. I do not know if I am strong enough to hold my grief and her joy at the same time, but I am going to try, because grief shared is lighter than grief carried alone, and joy shared is brighter than joy hoarded." Corwin looked at his lute as if seeing it for the first time. "I played," he said, wonder in his voice. "I finally played. Not as well as my teacher, never as well as my teacher, but well enough to honor his memory instead of fearing it, well enough to carry his music forward, even imperfectly." Aldrich turned from the window, and his face was younger somehow, as if the years had lifted with the mist. "I dreamed last night," he said, "of my wife, of the child who did not live. They were standing at a crossroads, and they were smiling. And my wife said to me, 'You have been running long enough. It is time to stand still. It is time to live in the place where you are, not the place where we were.'" He smiled, and there was peace in it. Peace I had not seen in his weathered face since he first arrived. I do not know if it was truly her or only my own heart, finally ready to hear what it needed to hear, but I know that I'm done seeking. I have found what I was looking for, not answers, but acceptance, not reunion, but release. I stood in the doorway to the kitchen, watching these 5 strangers who had become something more during their captivity at the crossroads. They had come seeking shelter from the wind, expecting to stay an hour or two before continuing their journeys. Instead, they had stayed 3 days and 2 nights, held by roads that refused to let them pass, forced to confront the burdens they carried and the wounds they had been running from. And now, the roads were open, and they were free to go. But something had changed. Something had shifted in each of them. Some weight had been set down. Some door had been opened that had long been closed. The crossroads had held them until they were ready, and now that they were ready, it released them. They left one by one over the course of the morning, and each departure felt like both an ending and a beginning. Marin was first, as she had been first to arrive. She emerged from the inn dressed in her traveling clothes, her courier's cloak cleaned and dried from its time near the fire, her saddlebags packed with provisions I'd insisted she take. But it was not her bags or her cloak that caught my attention. It was her face. The hard edges that had defined her when she first walked through my door had softened, and in their place was something gentler, not weakness, never that, but openness, a willingness to be seen. She embraced me at the door, a gesture that seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised me. Her arms were strong, her grip firm, and for a moment she held on as if drawing strength from the contact. "Thank you," she said when she stepped back, "not for the shelter or the food, though both were welcome. Thank you for being the keeper of this place, for maintaining the space where we could finally stop running." "What will you do?" I asked. "About the letter?" She smiled, and the expression transformed her face. "I have already done it. I read it this morning before dawn. My father forgave me. He forgave me years ago, before he even wrote the words. The letter was full of love, of pride, of hope for my future. Everything I was afraid it would not be." She touched her chest, where I knew the letter now rested, close to her heart. "I will carry it still, but not as a burden anymore, as a blessing." I watched her walk down the western road, her courier's cloak billowing in a wind that seemed gentle now, almost friendly. Her horse followed behind her, its hooves striking the packed earth in a steady rhythm that sounded almost like applause. She did not look back, but I saw her shoulders straighten as she walked, as if a weight had been lifted from them. Edric followed, his tinker's satchel over his shoulder, his brother's watch ticking steadily in his pocket. I could hear it from where I stood, that soft tick, tick, tick that had been silent for 7 years, now restored to life. "I will tell my brother's children about him," he said as he shook my hand. His grip was calloused from years of work, strong and certain, about who he was, what he loved, how he laughed. I have been afraid to speak of him for so long, afraid that words would make the loss more real, but silence only makes it lonely. Stories keep the dead alive in the only way that matters. "He would be proud of you," I said, "for the work you do, for the things you mend." Edric's eyes glistened, but he smiled. "Perhaps. I think he would mostly be proud that I finally fixed this damned watch." He laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise him, and then he turned and walked toward the southern road. He took the path toward the lowland villages where farmers were preparing for winter, where kettles needed mending and lanterns needed new wicks, where his brother's children waited without knowing that their uncle was finally ready to speak of their father. I watched until he disappeared over the first hill, his figure growing smaller and smaller, until it was just a dark shape against the golden morning light. Linnea left next, her steps quick with renewed purpose. The embroidered cloth was visible at her waist, tucked into her belt where she could touch it when she needed to. 2 birds now, flying together, grief and hope taking wing side by side. "I will make it in time," she said, though I had said nothing about her sister or the child. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "I know I will, and I will be strong enough to be there, to hold the joy and the grief together, because that is what love asks of us." "Will you tell your sister?" I asked. "About Rose?" Linnea paused, her hand going to the embroidered cloth. "Yes," she said finally. "I think I will. Not all of it, not yet, but enough. Enough so that she understands why I might weep, when I hold her child. Enough so that the joy does not have to pretend the grief does not exist. She took the eastern road toward the coastal towns and her sister's bedside, and I saw her break into a run as soon as she thought she was out of sight. Her braid bounced against her back, and her feet barely seemed to touch the ground. She was running toward something now, not away from it, and there is a world of difference between the two. Corwin lingered longest, standing at the crossroads with his lute strapped to his back, looking at the oak tree as if seeing it for the first time. The morning light caught the instrument's polished wood, and it seemed to glow with an inner warmth, as if the music he had finally released had awakened something sleeping within it. "I am going to play at every inn and tavern between here and the frontier," he said. His voice was different now, still soft, but no longer uncertain. "Not because I think I will find fame or fortune, but because music is meant to be shared, because my teacher's gift was never the notes, it was the connection. The way a song can reach inside a stranger and touch something true." He turned to me, and there was warmth in his young face that had not been there before. The shadows that had haunted his eyes had not disappeared entirely. I do not think such shadows ever disappear completely, but they had receded, pushed back by something brighter. "Perhaps I will play here someday," he said. "When I have learned enough songs, when I have stories to share, when I can play something worthy of this place." "You would be welcome," I said, and I meant it with all my heart. He took the northern road toward the mountain passes and the frontier beyond, and I heard him begin to play as he walked, a melody that rose and fell with his footsteps, weaving itself into the morning air. The sound carried back to me long after his figure had disappeared from view. Notes drifting like leaves on an autumn wind, beautiful and fleeting and full of promise. Only Aldrich remained. He stood beside the oak tree, his hand resting on its ancient bark, his carved walking stick planted in the earth beside him. The symbols on the stick caught the morning light, and for a moment they seemed to pulse with a faint luminescence, as if responding to something in the tree itself. I walked out to join him, and for a long moment we stood in silence, watching the road stretch away in all directions. "You are not leaving," I said. It was not a question. He smiled, and the smile reached his eyes, something I had not seen since he first arrived. "I have been traveling for 30 years, he said, "seeking something I could not name, running from something I could not face. And now I have stopped. I have faced it, I have named it, and I find that I am very, very tired." "You could rest here," I offered. "The inn has room, as many nights as you need." He shook his head slowly. "Not the inn, the crossroads. This is where I'm meant to be, at the junction, at the place where paths cross and travelers pause to decide their direction." He looked at the oak tree, and something passed between them, something I could not see but could almost feel. a recognition, an acceptance. I will become a hermit, I think, a keeper of the crossroads in a different way than you. I will sit beneath this tree and offer what wisdom I have gathered to those who pass by. Not answers, I have no answers, but companionship. The knowledge that they are not alone in their journeys. And Eleanor, I asked gently, and your son? His face softened at the names. They're with me still, he said. They always have been. I simply could not feel them while I was running. Now that I have stopped, he placed his hand flat against the oak tree's bark, and his eyes drifted closed. Now I can feel them everywhere, in the wind, in the light, in the silence between breaths. They are not gone, they are simply somewhere else. And someday, when my own journey is complete, I will find them there. I did not try to dissuade him. There are some callings that cannot be argued with, some purposes that find people rather than being found by them. And looking at Aldrich's face, at the peace that had settled into every line and furrow, I knew that he had finally found what he had been seeking for 30 years. Not answers, but acceptance. Not reunion, but the certainty that reunion would come in its own time, in its own way. I will bring you food, I said, and blankets when the cold comes, and company when the nights are long. Thank you. He clasped my hand, and his grip was strong despite his years. You have built something special here, a refuge in the wilderness, a light in the darkness. The old woman was right to bless this place. I returned to the inn, and Aldrich remained at the crossroads, lowering himself to sit among the oak tree's roots, as if returning to a home he had not known he was seeking. The morning light fell around him like a mantle, and the oak tree's bare branches seemed to curve protectively overhead, as if sheltering him from the world he had traveled for so long. The day passed quietly. I spent the morning tending to the tasks that had accumulated during the strange captivity of the previous days. There were dishes to wash, floors to sweep, linens to air. The fire needed feeding, and the larder needed organizing, and the horses in the stable needed fresh water and hay. These simple labors have always been my comfort. The routine of maintaining a space meant for others, the satisfaction of creating order out of small domestic chaos. As I worked, I found myself thinking about the travelers who had passed through my door over the years. Thousands of them, perhaps. Faces that blurred together as stories that I could no longer fully remember. But some of them had left marks on my memory, as indelible as the grain in the wood of my father's desk. The mother who wept by the fire, mourning a child she had sent away to safety during a border conflict. The soldier who sat in silence for 3 days, then suddenly began talking, and did not stop until dawn. The merchant who traded me a book of poems for a single night's lodging, claiming the poems were worth more than gold. And now these 5, Marin, Edric, Lena, Corwin, and Aldrich, they had come as strangers and left as something more. Not friends precisely, but fellow travelers in the truest sense, people who had shared a journey, even if their destinations lay in opposite directions. The afternoon brought a light rain that tapped against the windows like gentle fingers, asking for attention. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the droplets trace paths down the glass, and beyond them I could see Aldrich beneath the oak tree. The rain did not seem to touch him. Whether this was because the oak's branches sheltered him, or because of some other reason I cannot name, he sat dry and still while the world around him glistened with moisture. A caravan passed through around mid-afternoon. 3 wagons headed west carrying supplies to the frontier settlements. They did not stop, but the driver of the lead wagon raised a hand in greeting as they passed, and I saw him glance at Aldrich with curiosity. The old pilgrim raised his hand in return, a gesture of blessing or farewell or simple acknowledgement, and the caravan continued on its way. Later, as the rain eased and the sun emerged to paint the wet world in shades of gold and amber, I saw the young woman approach. She came from the southern road, a heavy pack on her back, her clothes travel-stained, and her face marked with the confusion of someone who has lost her way. She stopped at the crossroads, looking at the 4 roads as if they were choices she could not make. And then she noticed Aldrich sitting among the oak tree's roots. They spoke for nearly an hour. I could not hear their words from where I stood, but I could see the woman's posture shift as they talked. She began tense and uncertain, her shoulders hunched, her weight shifting from foot to foot. By the time they finished, she was sitting beside him, her pack on the ground, her face tilted up toward the oak tree's branches, as if seeing something there that I could not see. When she rose to leave, she embraced Aldrich briefly, then shouldered her pack and took the eastern road without looking back. Her steps were lighter than they had been when she arrived, and there was purpose in her stride that had been absent before. The crossroads had a new keeper now, or perhaps it had always had this keeper, waiting in the form of an old man who had not yet arrived, a pilgrim who had not yet completed his pilgrimage. Evening has come, and I am writing by the light of the white candle. The common room is empty now. The travelers departed, their secrets shared, their wounds tended. But the room does not feel lonely. It feels full of the words they spoke, the truths they uncovered, the healing they found in this unlikely place. I can almost hear their voices still echoing in the spaces between the rafters, lingering in the warmth of the fire. Marin's voice, steady and precise, finally softening as she spoke of her father. Edric's voice, rough with grief, warming as he remembered his brother. Linnea's voice, broken and beautiful, finding strength as she named her daughter. Corwin's voice, young and uncertain, trembling as he spoke of his teacher. And Aldrich's voice, weathered by decades of wandering, finally settling into peace as he found his place beneath the oak tree. These are the voices I will carry with me. These are the stories I will hold in the pages of this journal, preserved against the forgetting that time brings to all things. Outside, I can see Aldrich's silhouette, against the twilight sky. He sits perfectly still beneath the oak tree, his walking stick across his knees, his face turned toward the horizon, where the last light of day paints the clouds in shades of rose and gold. He looks like a statue, like a sentinel, like a saint in a forgotten shrine. But when I brought him bread and cheese earlier this evening, he smiled and thanked me, and his eyes were bright with life. A traveler approached him as I was returning to the inn, a young woman with a pack on her back and confusion in her eyes, different from the one who came this afternoon. And I watched them speak for nearly an hour as the twilight deepened around them. When the woman finally continued on her way, her steps seemed lighter than they had been before. The crossroads has a new keeper now, or perhaps a second keeper. The inn for those who need shelter, food, warmth. The oak tree for those who need guidance, wisdom, a moment of stillness before continuing their journey. Two kinds of rest, two kinds of welcome, two lights burning against the darkness that gathers at the edges of the world. I do not know why the roads closed that night. I do not know what power holds sway at this junction, what purpose guided the mist and the boundaries and the strange inability to leave. Perhaps it was the crossroads itself, possessing some will I cannot comprehend. Perhaps it was the oak tree, ancient beyond knowing, sensing when travelers needed to be held rather than released. Perhaps it was simply coincidence, a natural phenomenon with a natural explanation I'm too simple to understand. Or perhaps, and this is what I choose to believe, it was something simpler than all of that. Perhaps it was mercy. The mercy of a place that recognized 5 wounded travelers running from their pain and held them gently until they were ready to stop running. The mercy of a moment that became 3 days, a pause that became a transformation, a refuge that became a turning point. I have thought much about running these past few days, about what it means to flee from something rather than toward something, about the ways we use movement to avoid stillness, distance to avoid closeness, journeys to avoid arriving. The travelers who came to my inn were all running, each in their own way. Aaron from a letter she feared to open, Edric from a loss he feared to accept, Linnea from a joy she feared would break her, Corwin from a promise he feared he could not keep, and Aldrich from a grief he feared would drown him if he ever stopped to feel it. But running cannot last forever. Sooner or later, the road ends or turns back on itself or simply refuses to let us pass. And when that happens, we have a choice. We can rage against the stopping, or we can accept it. We can fight the stillness, or we can sink into it and discover what we have been running from all along. The 5 travelers who came to my inn chose to accept. They chose to stop running, to sit with their pain, to speak their wounds aloud to strangers who became, in that speaking, something more. And in doing so, they found what they did not know they were seeking, not escape from their grief, but integration of it, not forgetting, but remembering in a new way, not healing in the sense of becoming unbroken, but healing in the sense of learning to live with the breaks, to see them not as flaws, but as features, not as weaknesses, but as evidence of survival. The white candle burned steady on the mantel, its flame neither flickering nor leaning. It has burned since the winter solstice of my first year here, and it will burn for many winters yet to come. I do not know what it is or why it never diminishes. I only know that it was given to me by an old woman who walked atop the snow, who blessed this place and told me to welcome all who came. I have tried to honor that blessing every day, in every small act of hospitality, in every fire built and meal prepared and bed made ready for weary travelers. This inn is my calling as surely as the crossroads is now Aldrich's calling. We are both keepers in our own way, guardians of a place that exists at the boundary between journeys, at the pause between steps, at the moment of choosing that defines what comes next. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, settling into its nighttime rhythm of gentle warmth and quiet light. The wind is gentle to a whisper, and the stars are emerging one by one in a sky that stretches forever above the crossroads. The oak tree's branches sway slightly, though there is barely enough breeze to move them, as if the tree itself is breathing. Tomorrow, new travelers will come. New stories will unfold within these walls. New wounds will be carried in, and some of them, perhaps, will find healing. Some will stay for a night, some for a week, some for reasons they do not yet understand, and some perhaps will find that the roads refuse to let them leave, and they will be held here until they are ready to stop running. I will be here to welcome them, as I have always been, as I will always be, for this is what the inn offers, a place of rest, a chance when all hope seems lost for salvation, a light in the darkness, burning without diminishing, welcoming all who need what we offer. The road refused to let them leave, and in doing so, it set them free. Such is the way of crossroads, such is the mystery of this place, and such is the privilege of being its keeper.
And so another night draws to a close at the inn at the crossroads. Thank you for joining me on this journey, for pausing in your own travels to spend time in this place of warmth and wonder. I hope you found something here that you needed, perhaps a moment of peace, a breath of stillness, a reminder that it is okay to stop running sometimes. If you enjoyed this story, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the Candlelit Journal. Each click helps more travelers find their way to the inn. Until we meet again, dear listener, I wish you gentle roads and restful nights. May your journeys bring you where you need to be, even if you do not yet know where that is. Good night, sleep well, and may the light of the white candle guide you home.